I am a American who went to Ukraine and joined the International Legion last year. I spent 6 months in Ukraine, and I still strongly support the Ukrainian people in their cause, fighting for their freedom and, frankly, for our freedom.
I feel that my most important job is to help educate my fellow Americans on why our national security is tied up in Ukraine's survival. I didn't go to Ukraine for Ukraine. I went to Ukraine for America. A lot of Americans realize there's some troubling events happening in the world today, but what they might not realize is how big of a personal impact those geopolitical events have on the average American.
Ukraine's existential struggle against Russian aggression has heralded a brand new way of war. The massive impact of cheap drone swarms is going to have major implications for America's defense. America's safety depends upon the technological innovations that are being rapidly developed on Ukrainian battlefields. The future of warfare depends on cheap drones. Kamikaze drones that cost less than $500 can easily destroy a tank costing over $1 million. Drones have halted Ukraine's ability to break through Russian defenses. They remove the ability of soldiers to function safely outside. This completely changes age-old military doctrine. Ukraine's chief soldier stated in an article in The Economist that the war will be decided by technological advances that both sides are racing towards. Electronic warfare is one aspect of battlefield technology that Russia has had an advantage in for decades. Ukraine loses over 10,000 drones per month. That's over 300 per day. Most drones that are lost are reconnaissance drones that are disabled by the use of anti-drone jammers. Russia has built a huge Moscow factory that is producing enormous quantities of copies of the Iranian-made suicide drones they were provided. Russia has set a goal of training over 10,000 new drone pilots per year. American defense planners are not delivering what Ukraine truly needs: vast quantities of inexpensive drones and anti-drone systems. Autocratic powers such as Iran, North Korea, China, Russia, and Hamas will in the future likely use technologies such as cheap drone swarms to overwhelm the defenses of democracies. If America's enemies invest in cheap drone swarms, they will overcome America's technological advantage in defense. While the U.S. Army has some reconnaissance drones available at the small unit level, they do not have the same capabilities that the Ukrainian military, let alone the Russian military, currently have. Stopping a swarm of thousands of Chinese drones would be very difficult for an American aircraft carrier, which is equipped to face traditional missile and ship-based threats. The average Ukrainian faces difficulties and hazards unimaginable to most Americans. Simple life activities such as shopping or spending time with family can lead to catastrophe. Residents of cities often have to shelter from increasing bomb attacks. These shelters are often without heating or food supplies. In Kyiv, attack warnings oftentimes come 5 or more times per week. Men are especially affected because they cannot leave the country and they are increasingly at risk of being drafted into the military. All Ukrainian schools have bomb shelters, but the experience of living life under constant bombing often gives children PTSD. Ukraine's military ballooned from about 200,000 pre-invasion to over 1 million after the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022. They didn't have enough equipment to outfit their forces at the lower level, let alone over 1 million troops. Western military aid has fallen far short of Ukraine's battlefield needs. While US and European assistance has been essential for Ukraine to stay in the fight, the assistance has been far less than what's needed. The way the United States supports Ukraine is decided by several critical congressional committees. Those planners are incentivized to provide small quantities of expensive military systems. What's needed is huge quantities of relatively cheap basic military equipment such as night vision, inexpensive squad-level reconnaissance drones, cheap vehicles for small units to properly supply themselves and evacuate casualties.
NATO has suddenly roared back into relevance after being denigrated as a relic of the Cold War that should probably be retired. The core bedrock principle of NATO is what's called Article 5, which says that an attack upon any NATO country is considered to be an attack upon all NATO countries. Russia's invasion of their neighbor is destruction of the post-World War II international order. The war in Ukraine actually has direct impact on our national security. The brave Ukrainian soldiers, plus the many thousands of international volunteers, including Americans who are there fighting for Ukraine, these people are actually defending freedom here in the United States. Defeating Russian aggression within Ukraine and in eastern Ukraine will save America trillions of dollars, because then we do not need to build bases and staff them with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of American soldiers. There's a deeper reason why the war in Ukraine should matter to the average American. We provide an enormous amount of important moral direction within the world. Our large military is predominantly used for good, counterbalancing the very strong and very active forces of evil in the world. Us backing out of Ukraine and leaving that nation of 40 million people to Putin's tender mercies would send a signal to the entire world that America's best days are behind us.
The good news is, if you'd like to get involved, there's some very easy ways that you can help support Ukraine. You don't have to fly there and pick up a rifle. You can help from here. It's just as important, if not more important.
The urgent equipment needs of Ukraine's military units have been filled largely by an informal network of civilian groups that have sprung up within Ukraine and outside to ensure that Ukraine's military units have the essential tools they need to stay alive and stay in the fight. Ordinary Americans, Brits, Germans, and Taiwanese groups are banding together to send critically needed equipment to supply Ukrainian military units. The defense of Ukraine is the first time in history that a nation at war can be so directly supported by overseas volunteers. The benefit that we're getting in defending democracy in Europe and everywhere around the world, and frankly in saving American lives, is an enormous ROI on the very small amount of money that we've invested into Ukraine. The fate of democracy worldwide is being decided now in eastern Ukraine.
We have to join the fight here with our time, our wallets, and our passion. This is the time. This is the fight. Ukraine is the place. This is our fight. Join us. Slava Ukraini! Thank you.